Christmas! Alyssa and I are here to read for our 12 days of service. And for those of you who might be watching for the first time, during the holidays, during the 12 days of Christmas, Alyssa and I started a service project, which is the 12 days of service. So each day we decided to read a story and post it online and share with our family and friends, because our family all live very far away, and we wanted to do this as a way to reach out to them. And we hope that you enjoy the story. Today we're reading In the Great Walled Country, adapted from the story by Raymond Alden. Far away, up at the north end of the world, is a land called the Great Walled Country. It got its name because all around the country is a wall hundreds of feet high and hundreds of feet thick. The wall is made of ice and never melts, winter or summer. For this reason, not many people have ever been to this place. The land is filled with children, for nobody who lives there ever grows up. The king, queen, the princes and princesses, and members of the court may be as old as you please, but they are children too. They play a great deal of the time, but they make excellent rulers, and everyone is pleased with the government. There are all sorts of curious things about the way they live in the Great Walled Country, but this story is only about their Christmas. You can just imagine what fun their Christmas must be, so near to the North Pole, with ice and snow everywhere. But that's not all. Grandfather Christmas lives just north of the north side of the country, so close that his house leans against the Great Wall for support. Grandfather Christmas is his name in the Great Walled Country. In other places, he might be called Santa Claus. Having Grandfather Christmas for a neighbor has many advantages. For one, he takes care of all the Christmas gifts for the children in the Great Walled Country. On the day before Christmas, just before he sets out to deliver presents to the rest of the world, he goes into a huge forest of Christmas trees that grows behind the king's palace and fills the trees with toys and books and all sorts of good things. When night comes, the children dress up in warm clothes and go to the forest to gather gifts for their friends. The forest is so big that there is room for everyone to wander among the trees and choose gifts for their friends in secret. No one ever thinks of taking a present for himself. This is the way they have been celebrating Christmas for hundreds of years. But one time, many years ago, the children of the Great Walled Country had a very strange Christmas. Early that year, a visitor came to the land. He was the first stranger in a long, long time who had been able to get over the wall of ice. The stranger told the king and queen that he was an explorer. He talked for hours about the places he had been. Then he asked the king about the Great Walled Country. He wanted to know all about their customs and holidays. When the king told him how they celebrated Christmas, the explorer laughed. "That's very interesting," he said, "but I should think that children who have a Grandfather Christmas for a neighbor could find a better and easier way to get their presents. Why don't you each choose one of your own presents when you go into the forest on Christmas Eve? No one can tell what you want as well as you can." The king thought this was a very wise idea, and so did the queen and the other members of the court. They all agreed that they had been very foolish never to have thought of this before. So the king sent out an announcement to all the children of the land. The plan seemed as wise to them as it had to the king and queen. Everyone had at some time been a little disappointed with their gifts. Now there would be no danger of that. The stranger was soon gone from the country. The seasons passed until at last it was Christmas time again. Now, on Christmas Eve, the children always got together at the palace and sang carols until it was time to go into the forest. On this particular night, it seemed to the king that the music was not quite as merry, and the children's eyes did not shine as gladly as in other years. But there could be no good reason for this, since everyone was expecting a better time than usual. So he thought no more about it. There was, however, one person at the palace that night who was not pleased with the new plan about Christmas gifts. This was a boy named Peter. He lived not far from the palace with his sister Rose. Rose's legs were crippled, and she could not walk. She spent her days in a chair by the window looking out at the world beyond her little house. Peter took good care of his sister and tried to make her happy in every way that he could. On Christmas, he had always gone to the forest and returned loaded with pretty things for Rose. And although she was not able to go there and get presents for her brother, he didn't mind. He always got plenty of gifts from his friends. But now Peter wondered, what about Rose? Under the new plan, they could only go once and take gifts for themselves. All of Peter's friends were busy planning what they would pick, but his poor sister could not go one step towards the forest. After thinking for a long time, Peter knew that there was only one thing he could do. That night, the children made their way into the starlight that was so bright it almost showed their shadows on the sparkling snow. As soon as they came to the edge of the forest, they set out, eager to see the trees all full of wonderful things. 10 minutes later, if you had been in the forest, you would have seen the children standing with tears running down their cheeks, for they all searched the low bending branches. They saw nothing. Had Grandfather Christmas forgotten them? Or had there been some dreadful accident that kept him away? As the children went sadly trooping out of the forest, dragging their empty bags behind them, some of them came upon Peter. His bag was so full, it seemed it would burst. "Isn't this the best Christmas ever?" he called out to his friends. "Grandfather Christmas has never been so good to us before." "Why, what do you mean?" one of them said. "There aren't any presents in the forest at all." "No presents," said Peter. "I have a bag full of them." But he did not open the bag to show the others. He did not want them to see what he had done, he had not done as the king had ordered. The presents in his bag were all for Rose and not for himself. "I left many more than I took," Peter told the other. "Come and see." Following his own footprints, Peter led his friends back into the woods. "There they are. See them shining on the trees?" But no one saw anything but ordinary evergreens. Peter must be walking in his sleep, the others thought. Maybe he's dreaming he found presents, but his bag is really just full of pine cones. On Christmas Day, there was sadness all through the great walled country. But those who came to the house of Peter and his sisters saw plenty of books and dolls and beautiful toys piled up around Rose's chair. When they asked where these things came from, Rose said, "Why, from the Christmas tree forest, of course." But how could that be? There had been no gifts on the trees. The only one who could solve the mystery was Grandfather Christmas himself. So the king asked 3 of the princes to go see Grandfather Christmas that very day. Getting over the wall of ice was not easy, but at last the princes reached the other side. They slid down the chimney of Grandfather Christmas's house. Inside, they found the old man sound asleep. The princes shook him gently until he woke. He sat up, rubbing his eyes. One of the princes spoke. "Grandfather Christmas, sir, we have come from the great walled country. The king wants to know why you forgot us and left no presents in the forest this year." "I never forget you," said Grandfather Christmas. "The presents were there. You didn't see them, that's all." The princes told him that the children had searched the whole forest and no one had found any presents. "Indeed," said Grandfather Christmas. "What about Peter? Did he find presents?" "Did he?" Yes, he did. Then the princes were silent, for they had heard about the gifts at Peter's house. "You had better go home," said Grandfather Christmas, "and let me finish my nap." The presents were there, but they were never intended for children who were looking only for themselves. "I'm not surprised you didn't see them," and he turned over and went back to sleep. The next December, the king sent out another official announcement. This year, everyone must seek gifts for others in the Christmas tree forest in the old way. So that is what they have been doing ever since. And in order that they do not forget what happened, in case someone should ever ask again to change, the king reads to them the story every year from their big book about the story of the sad Christmas when they had no gifts. That's all. We hope you enjoyed the story. Bye.